Hey guys, Karen here, back with another Last Epoch video. Today we're going to be talking about the quality of life changes with the second pre-patch blog post that was put out by EHG. There's a lot of new changes. There's going to be bug fixes, not necessarily reworks, but tweaks to characters' numbers, less played classes, up a notch. Hopefully that will bring up their popularity and also bring up their damage as well. Specifically, we're talking about the masteries Forge Guard, Shaman, and Sorcerer. Those particular masteries were less played because they just did less damage, or there are certain things about the classes that weren't good. Hopefully these changes and the patch that's coming out will fix some of those problems. First is they're making some changes to blessings. So essentially, you'll be able to select the blessings. So it says here, after defeating a boss, unlocking new blessings, all of the blessing options will be saved to the blessing stash. This includes blessings that you do not have select when you kill a monolith boss. You may then switch between any of the blessings without losing the rolls you earn. This is a really good change because that means you don't have to keep fighting the same boss. You can fight at one time and have that blessing unlocked. Sometimes you may want a specific blessing over another one, but even though that one rolled higher. So with this change, I think it's really good because then also you can change your blessings on the fly as well, depending on what type of build you want to build. For alts, this means once you've defeated a timeline, you may be able to swap out a blessing you have earned with any blessings from another character that shares the stash with. Blessings earned on other characters will be usable with the minimum roll until a better roll is unlocked on the alt. So this is also great for alt characters, additional characters that you'll be making. Next is there's going to be improvements to the ladder. So this will be like the race for level 100 on hardcore or normal mode during the cycle. With monolith timelines, you'll be able to search for specific rewards. So here, if you type in set, it will light up all of the ones that have a set reward on it. I think this is also a nice change because sometimes you may be looking for gold and basically saves you having to search manually for the gold nodes. You can just type in gold and do the specific gold nodes. Next is loot filter improvements. I think this is an amazing change. They're going to add legendary potential and Weaver's Wield into the filtering of your loot filter. So that way you'll be only able to see the legendary potential items. This is a really nice change because at the very extreme tiers, once you've been farming a lot of items, you're going to get duplicates of items and you won't care about certain uniques. You only want to be able to see the legendary potential uniques so that it gets rid of all of the clutter on this screen. So really nice change here. Next is item faction changes. So with the new item faction changes, the maximum rank of each faction is rank 10. And for 1.1, each time you gain a new rank in your item faction, whether it's Circle of Fortune or Merchant's Guild, you're going to gain 5% increased favor gain. This will result in a maximum of 60% once you get to rank 12. So the increase rank has been increased to 12, which means we get 2 more rewards per those ranks. However, experience now scales less with corruption than it did with higher corruption values, and favor gain is based on experience gain. Higher corruption isn't going to affect your favor gain as much, and here there's going to outline what increases or changes have been made to the Merchant's Guild. I'm not really going to play Merchant's Guild, I don't think, but now there's new changes to Circle of Fortune. So with Circle of Fortune, there's been 2 more ranks added for experimental items from Exile Mages and also from the rewards based on the farming of their bosses. So a big change here is in rank 12 previously, there was a node that duplicated your prophecies. And basically before it gave you double of what items you gained. So for example, if you farmed a ring, it will give you 2 of the exact same ring. Now with these changes, it will just give you 2 of that same item. So there's a chance for you to roll a different unique. So it will result in granting 2 different items, most likely. So again, these are the changes outlined for Circle of Fortune. Next is changes to the monolith system, whereby it will be easier to gain corruption and also it will be easier to progress your corruption in the monolith. Gaze of Oribus had diminishing returns previously, but now in 1.1, each of your Gaze of Oribus will grant 12 corruption, but it will cap at 4, so only 4 gazes can be consumed at one time. So instead of all your gazes being consumed at once, the rest will now carry over to the next echo web, the amount of gaze consumed will be capped to 4 to avoid the possibility of too much corruption and experience a sudden increase in difficulty after killing a shade while increasing your corruption in your higher corruption timelines, which could lead to unfortunate player deaths. However, we have made a change to make that less painful too. Upon dying to a shade of Orbis, players will only lose 1 gaze of Orbis as opposed to losing them all. So this is also a nice change as well in terms of progressing your difficulty tiers. These changes also mean that corruption can be increased faster, as consuming a full stack of gaze in 1.1 will provide 48 corruption, which required at least 10 gaze in 1.1. So a really nice change to know that the endgame progression is going to be easier to go through. Now this is the meat of the actual changes, is the class changes. While the full patch notes will cover every single change, today we're going to focus on a few frequently mentioned cases. So first one is going to be channeling skills. Before, channeled skills stopped all mana regen. For 1.1, most channeled skills which prevented mana regen while channeling have been changed. They no longer prevent base mana regeneration. However, the base mana regeneration amount has been added to their channel cost. Other modifiers to their mana costs have been adjusted where necessary to account for this change. So this is a nice change for channeling builds. A lot of the times you weren't channeling long enough in these types of builds because of the mana regen. So some skill changes here. Disintegrate is the most classic of the channeling spells, and it looks like the Disintegrate skill has actually been buffed, so there's more damage on the skill. Some of the nodes, the skill nodes related to Disintegrate have also been changed as well. I haven't played Sorcerer too much, so I can't speak on these types of changes or skills too much. Let's scroll down a little bit more and have a look at other skills. Shield Bash. I played a lot of Sentinel, and I did want to make Shield Bash work as a skill previously, and they have acknowledged that too. We even noticed that when people talk about melee skills, Shield Bash doesn't even get a mention. So it says here, Shield Bash's base cooldown has been increased to 18 seconds. However, stunning enemies will now make Shield Bash available again by reducing the remaining cooldown by 20% when you stun an enemy. This counts stuns from any sources, including skills, not just stuns inflicted by Shield Bash itself. So I guess this is going to combo well with a stun-based build. So even though the cooldown has increased, if you spec towards a stun-based build, you'll be able to get Shield Bash more often. But the more juicy part will be this node here. Shield Bash no longer has a cooldown, but costs significantly more mana, and no longer has a guaranteed stun or ignite. So 9 mana cost. If you build into attunement, maybe a fire-based paladin build will be nice for propping Shield Bash. It also says here Shield Bash has increased melee damage based on your block effectiveness. So again, with shield, because you're equipping a shield, it's going to give you block effectiveness. I like this change that Shield Bash will be spec'd towards more a block focused build. Shield Bash also has increased attack speed scaling with your block chance, again leaning towards the block chance, which is really nice. So I'm really keen to build Shield Bash and see how Shield Bash is going to work in this new update. I think maybe the classes I will play is Sentinel for sure, but I'm deciding what to go for in terms of Paladin or Forge Guard, because there are going to be changes made to Forge Guard as far as I know. Alright, so we have Avalanche. Avalanche is getting a few changes. So it says here with over 20 changes and adjustments to its skill tree. That's really nice. So I don't know too much about this skill, but apparently it was a channeled skill before. It's no longer a channeled spell. It costs 50 mana by default and creates 1 large boulder at the target location, followed by 10 smaller boulders in the target location by over 2 seconds. It's now targetable, and the boulders fall within a circle rather than an extended rectangle in front of the player. It says here Avalanche has increased chance to stun and increased crit chance on this node, and also it grants a storm stack which will proc your lightning based on this node. So 15% chance per point means 45% chance to proc a storm stack, and I think that's going to be quite a lot, especially on your base skill of Avalanche. It basically launches 11 boulders, so it's going to trigger 11 times, or a chance to proc 11 times. So that will be a really nice thing to see. I think maybe this patch for 1.1, the 3 classes I do want to try out is Sentinel, Shaman, or Primalist, some form of Primalist, and also maybe some mage build. So it could be Sorcerer. I might want to try Spellblade. Let's see how we go in the patch when we actually get the notes. Passives. So there's passive changes to Sorcerer Forge Guard, and Shaman. Again, they're three classes that were not as played and not as meta. So first, let's look at some of the sorcerer nodes. So we have a node here, Arcane Current. You deal more lightning damage to shocked enemies, and then at 4 points, you have a chance to inflict a spark charge. So this is really nice to build with spark charges. There's a node here which gives you ward based on your mana. So again, a more defensive node, which is really nice because one of the things that sorcerers was lacking is defense. So having a shield is based on your mana is really good because sorcerers build into mana and build into intelligence as well. So that's a really nice synergy that they're going for. Again, another one here, mana spent gained as ward, another defensive point. And then some increased damage point nodes here as well. So you gain additional spell damage and have a chance to refund a portion of your mana. That's really nice. And then Dragon Breath here gives you increased area damage and elemental damage. Again, something that Sorcerer did really well was try to build up mana and try to do elemental damage. So really nice change to Sorcerer that's coming. Let's have a look at the Forge Guard tree. Forge Guard is something that I built in patch 1.0. And I did feel like Forge Guard was quite weak, because the thing about Forge Guard as well is you want to try and build minions on the class, or at least that's what the fantasy was trying to aim towards. Part was building Ring of Shields, but the Ring of Shields node was terrible. It gave you like 3% chance to cast Ring of Shields, which is really bad. So now they've actually increased the chance to cast Ring of Shields. So you have a chance to cast Shield on block. And this is actually up to 50%. 100 block effectiveness per shield per point. That's really nice. Increased minion damage, minion health and minion armor is also really good. And this effect can trigger up to 3 times every 6 seconds. Okay, so this one is a really nice change to build Ring of Shields in. It also looks like Forge Guard is going to be one of the classes using the parry mechanic. Parry is not a common defensive option used, but it looks like you can get 8% parry chance when you spec into a dual wielding weapon. So another nice change is for Forge Guard to be able to dual wield instead of wielding a two-handed weapon. And this is going to be a very generalized skill. So based on what type of build you go, whether you go dual wield or you go two-handed weapons, or if you have a shield, this is going to give you some type of bonus. This is a really nice change. You have increased crit chance while having a two-handed weapon, and you get the 5-point bonus as well. So another thing that these old classes didn't do well, which is common in the newer classes, now you can see that Sorcerer is getting that love. Forge Guard is also getting that love in these other two skills. So here we get the 5-point bonus of increased crit strike when you have a two-handed weapon. This one, Hammer and Anvil, gives you another 4-point bonus. This says, after usability that costs 20 mana or more, your minions gain increased attack speed. This is quite nice. I think this will work for a Forge Strike build. And then finally you've got of course, the classic Javelineer Forge Strike build, which was terrible in 1.0. We'll have to see how good this build is in 1.1. Now let's have a quick look at the Shaman. Again, more 4-point nodes. A 3-point node here, increased spell damage. Because Shaman is focused on totems, a lot of these nodes look like they have synergies with totems and with minions. So that's going to be quite nice. Now, a big change here is they did change the ward balancing. So there is a graph that shows you that the ward from before, it decays the same or tiny bit less until 4,000. And then once you are over 4,000 ward, it's going to increase exponentially. So it's not going to be possible to build like 30,000 ward without it decaying insanely quickly. So it does look like, for example, at 18,000, it's going to decay. It's going to have a decay rate of 18,000 as well. So it's going to expire insanely quick. And especially, I'm assuming if you're at 30,000 ward, it's probably going to decay at like 90,000 or something. So here they've also included the formula, which is really nice by the studio to include that on how the math works. The biggest change we wanted to clarify, this formula change is not a full-on nerf. While there's certainly potential for outliers on high generation of ward being ranked in, there's also natural and intended methods of ward generation, which currently feel a little bit too weak. As such, the change in formula is a stronger retention of ward below 4,000, and to address the outliers is now a much faster decay of 10,000. Basically, wards that generated ward insanely quickly aren't going to be as strong, but there are a lot of builds in Last Epoch that still use ward that need this mechanic. So I think with this change as well, you're not going to be able to push thousands of corruption tiers as fast as you did before, because your ward does get nerfed quicker. It does fall off quicker as well. Maybe, I mean, who knows, with these changes, if you've got a build that attacks and you generate ward as you attack and you're attacking insanely quickly, maybe there's a way to still keep the threshold of ward insanely high. So even if it decays really quickly, if you're generating like 50,000 ward, it averages around to having 20,000 health. Maybe that's a possibility, but we'll have to see what these changes bring out in the new patch. So again, I'm really excited for this new patch. I'm really looking forward to playing Sorcerer, Forge Guard, and Shaman. I think these are classes I will definitely want to try. With the changes to Shield Bash, that's something that maybe Forge Guard can build into, or a Paladin, based on the skill. We'll have to see what the notes and the patch notes look like on the day of release. I'm going to be blasting Last Epoch because this is my favorite ARPG on the market at the moment. I'm really keen on what the future holds for Last Epoch. If you enjoyed the video, drop me a like down below. As always, have an awesome day. Bye for now.